So here's the reality. When it comes down to it, organic traffic, it's great until it isn't. What'll happen is you'll start to get some momentum with it, or at least kind of faux momentum with it, if you will, but you'll get some traction, technically some visibility, but you get to the point where it's really tough to scale it because it cannot be predictable unless you are one of the unicorns out there who is putting in a ton of work and, posting a bunch of times a day and keeping that up for long term. I just know my people, coaches out there, they typically don't want to do this. I know for myself, I was an accountant for 7 years. I've been full time now for 6 years or so, but I did not come into this to post on social media all the time. I came into this for one, looking for a way to make extra income. I guess when it was all said and done, I got into it through affiliate marketing, but then quickly transitioned into business coaching. And so I say all this to say, you have a zone of genius and you don't feel like posting all data in order to get clients and serve them at the same time here. So that was where I've just seen it time and time again. And I mentioned a client earlier on that I was chatting with, and for him, he was doing the same thing, but he was having it where, yes, there's organic on the posting side, but on the same front, there's actually organic on the cold outreach side. And I see that this is another place that a lot of coaches are kind of getting, I don't want to say getting stuck, but it's a very similar game. What happens, and even for him, he had a VA taking care of that, right? And so, but the problem comes back to, you start running into restrictions now, right? Facebook is telling you, oh, you can only send so much. Instagram's telling you can only send so much. It's a great place to get some initial success, get some, like I said, even with potentially posting, right? But you're going to hit a wall. And, lucky for him, he ended up actually making income from it. But a lot of people will end up hitting that wall before they even get to a point where their business can become profitable from it. So that's where we really ramped up and got him down the paid ad side, because it was the no-brainer decision in order to actually grow his business beyond the plateau that he had found himself at. He was floating between $1,000 to $5,000 a month. And so this is really the big thing that's going to help to ramp him up. And he came to me that way. And obviously there's some different layers that we'll get right into that we kind of focused on first that actually helped his organic efforts and got him over the 10K month mark. But this is really why it's so important to make sure you're not just focusing organic. There's nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, you need to have something where it can be as simple as a push of a button to get you up to the income goals you want to hit. All right, so first things first though, before we get into the paid ad side, we have to address the bigger piece, the ecosystem at large here, before we even spend a dollar on this stuff, because last thing I want is you getting discouraged because you're now putting money into a machine that you were never prepared to monetize. And so when I say that, one of the first pieces, honestly, for anyone who comes into branded clients with me that we're touching on is the offer. That's the foundation. That is where we are doing a lot of reverse engineering, honestly, from that starting point. So that's really why it's so essential to make sure that we're dialing in. And a lot of the problem too with people who are kind of going from organic to paid ads is you can go ahead and actually kind of be very loose with who your avatar is with organic, because there's a lot of wiggle room. And with paid ads, there's just not the same wiggle room for that, because with organic, you can go ahead and kind of customize. Let's just say you get somebody in front of you who's not a perfect fit, right? You can customize your offer to match them, right? And it's because you've kind of done things organically where you could argue there's a little bit more trust maybe from it, right? Whatever the case is, for even though you're barely talking to enough people, but for the people who have responded to you, there's a little more trust because of this kind of organic flow. Now, with that being said, on the paid ad side, you need the clarity in order to get people in front of you. And now this is not a con. This is actually a baked in truth that's going to help you long term. Because if you go the other way, you are really limiting your scalability within the business because you haven't had it dialed in. You want to have it where your offer has a perfect avatar for it. We don't need our perfect avatar to buy from us every single time to get clients, but we need to understand what that looks like, what that is, what it feels like, what they look like. And if we can understand that, it can make it far easier for us to go ahead and develop our ecosystem behind that, right? So that's where the offer kicks in. And then from there, it's like, okay, what's the lead flow have to look like? The lead flow has to basically look like, we need to make it that we can have where people can flow seamlessly to our high ticket offer. And so, even for the client I'm mentioning, like he has a community. So it's like, all right, let's make it where the community bridges the gap smoothly into the high ticket offer. He also takes sales calls. All right, let's make it so that we have a smooth path to get sales calls booked on this end as well too. And so this is where, before we do that, the ecosystem has to be intact beforehand. So that's why I was saying we can get organic wins to be even larger if we double down this first, right? And it's the same thing even for me, where it was kind of the complete opposite. When I was first getting ads in 2021, I ended up wasting a lot of money because I was trying to meddle with too many moving pieces while I was scaling up my ad budget. And so that's where you want to make sure you've got things right first, dial them in at the foundation, and then you can start to really bring in validation early with scaling the ads. Now, once you get your ecosystem in place, you have to understand the framework behind the self-funding client engine. Now, this is the strategy that I teach, and to me, it's the only strategy you really should be rocking with when it comes to ads, or at least have this as a foundation regardless, honestly, too. And this is why when I see a lot of people come to me, they have it where they're spending money on ads and they're getting discouraged because they're just spending, and they haven't made a dime back, right? Like, even for myself, it was like, back when I was getting started, that was how everyone was teaching it. You spend to get leads and then get clients, but there's nothing in between there. And so if you have it, if you flip this on its head, you can have where now you have a low ticket offer that's getting people to actually, one, pay you money and get you breaking even on ad spend. But now beyond that, what's happening for these people who are actually paying you money? These are people who are more qualified than somebody who's just a freebie seeker at the end of the day. And there's nothing wrong with freebie seekers. I have freebie seekers who end up turning into clients at the end of it, right? And so that's the problem. The more buyers you have, I see a drastically higher percentage of buyers turning into clients than leads turning into clients. For myself, I see around anywhere from 0.5 to like 0.8% on a typical kind of month is what I tell clients, is how I see a lead convert. So let's just say into a client. So let's just say 1 out of every 200, right? At its worst. But I see for buyers, like literally last month, it was at like 9% of my buyers are turning into clients. And so this is why we take this approach instead of having where we're just spending. And once you start having it this way now, this is where starting to scale becomes way more efficient, right? Like I said, now because you're making that money back, you're breaking even, it makes it easier for you to start to understand which levers to pull as long as you know what data to start looking at. And so this is why this is the only approach I truly take when it comes down to scaling ad budgets and really going about operating an ad campaign as a coach, because you need to have something that's going to give you a chance to remove the fear of wondering, wow, when am I going to get this money back? How long is it going to take until, what if I haven't closed a client yet this month? Especially when you're lower ad spend, it's not just going to happen overnight. So we need to make sure we come in with a game plan that sets you up to really succeed long-term. And the sweet sauce with this, honestly, is it gets even better as you scale the ad budget up. And the truth is, for me, like, I actually spent about 6 months at a low ad budget before I actually decided to scale my budget up there, right? So, I tell people all the time, you can start at $15 a day, and then from there you can start to scale it up. And it took me so long to go from $15 a day up to $100 a day. When I had the system really moving and grooving after about 6 weeks in. So we're talking, right? Like I said, it was like 9 months of me starting it, or 8 months or so. And it took me, for like 6 months, if you will, and change, I was lollygagging with it, right? And so that's why the cost there, I could have scaled up so much further and started reaping the benefits that much faster as well, too. That's the biggest piece, is we always think about what we can lose, but when you have this self-funding client engine, there's technically a lot more to gain if it's validated and as it starts to really work in your favor, which can happen very quickly. All right, now, in case this is getting a little bit too real for you, let's just help to reduce the fear and anxiety so we can get you moving this direction, because the longer you wait, especially when you're ready at this stage, like I said, the more it's going to hurt you. So I want to see it for you where you can start with a small, reasonable budget. There's no reason to come out the gate swinging $50 a day, $100 a day, $700 a day. $15 a day is all I recommend my clients to start, and that is to go ahead and get validation. Now, what is validation? Validation, at the end of the day, is you validating your offer, your initial low-ticket offer with your audience. And we're validating this with, initially, before you're getting buyers, clicks, leads, eyeballs, views, these pieces. But the most important piece in that early stage is, without a doubt, buyers. We need to make sure that buyers are coming in and that we are actually setting ourselves up in a way that we are getting buyers consistently. So now, once you started to validate and started to get some buyers in consistently, the next step then starts to come. How can we now start to scale this up? That is how we want to do this here. But the reality is, we are really at first, before we're really scaling up too aggressively, we need to understand, okay, this is working, and maybe even before you get your first buyers, we need to start optimizing the sense of, all right, why aren't people buying? Which ads are people leaning into that really the message is landing more? Maybe we need to adjust our funnel to really match that and bridge the gap there. We did all the hard work up front, optimizing our back end with a high ticket offer. We now need to make sure that the low ticket offer still stays very congruent so that the people who want to buy the low ticket actually want to ascend to the high ticket offer. That's where a lot of people kind of get mixed up. I always say I'm not trying to get rich selling low ticket here. The goal is high ticket clientele in the back, high ticket clientele in the back end. So we need to understand what is it that's actually going to get the right avatar to purchase. It's not just blindly about purchasing, or else you're going to be optimizing for the wrong thing. So we want to make sure we're getting the message right. And then from there, we start to actually get the ads right and then have that blend into the funnel to make sure it's working well. And now once we start seeing buyers coming in on a more consistent basis, now the goal is how can we start getting a buyer a day, right? A buyer a day. And so now as long as the data looks okay, which we talk about the health score, which is a metric that I basically teach my clients there as far as how to optimize and make sure you're in a healthy place to scale your budget. That is how we want to make sure that we're actually going ahead and scaling predictably in order to set up the business for success long-term early on and know when you should flip that switch, right? Make sure you're not sitting there like my client there is like, what should I do with this? You want to have where coming into this, you understand what the line is and how to make sure that you're in a safe space that you can actually go ahead and grow the business with ads profitably. Now, I don't want to just skim over this part here, right? Because reading and understanding the data, that is a massive part to your success, all right? And so this is where we want to make sure that we know, like I mentioned, what are the key metrics? What do we need to have in a strong balance, if you will, right? To make sure that things are in a safe spot to scale. And so my client reached out to me and he was saying, hey, I've got sales coming in, I've got leads coming in, but a lot of times I just don't know when I should scale. And so that's when I'm like, all right, let's go ahead and let's stop trusting the gut. For a lot of this stuff, trusting your gut is a very powerful thing, but we need to get away from trusting the gut for a moment. And let's go ahead and pull up your AIO hub, right? So that's like I said, that's the dashboard I have for my clients. And it breaks down a lot of these pieces around just the key metrics and has other strong AI features in there as well too, which actually I'll even get in there as a moment. So for one, we looked at just the raw data just out the gates. And so for one, I saw, like I said, he spent about $35 a day. And, so let's just say, I don't know, it's a little over $210 in the week. And he actually had made back before getting a client more than $210. So the reality is here, he's already, before anything else happens, any clients, with all the buyers that he generated with that, he is already in the green. So now once again, for me, I'm teaching folks, how can you go ahead and sell a 2 to 5K offer as your flagship offer? And then you can have back ends and all the stuff behind that. But that's already where he is living. So I'm like, all right, that is a massive sign. And then even before we had this conversation, so I have in there basically an AI function that's called the weekly brief. And so basically every week you can go ahead and you can technically do it more. Every week you go ahead and you let AI, what I've trained based off of $4 million plus of coaching results for clients I have, what you should be doing as far as based on how your ad performance is. And so even that was saying it's time to scale. The health score is looking phenomenal. The net buyer score is looking phenomenal there. And so that's where the reality is. What happens if this was at $100 a day, right? If it was in a good spot there, it would really put you in a place where it's like, okay, let's now make sure that we have it, that you are not missing out. And that's where I saw for myself so often that you're spending a little bit and you're break even there. What happens if you had $100 spend? How many buyers would you be getting for that? And how much would you then be missing out on if you didn't take that approach? That's really how I'm pushing it. And that's how we need to see it. And I say this from experience. That's what I was doing for far too long, where I was making it where it's like, okay, I will go ahead and just spend what I got because I'm comfortable. But then the regret, it was real. The business was successful. Like I said, I had organic helping me, but how much more growth could have happened otherwise? And this is why, if you view it as how many buyers am I getting at $35 a day versus how many buyers am I getting at $100 a day, if you're breaking even, no matter what, you are giving yourself more opportunity for clients. I already broke down the math how it works for my business. Like I said last month, 9% conversion rate from buyers to clients. So now you start playing this game of how can I start getting basically 9 buyers, or what's that, 9% out of, we're talking, let's say 11 buyers. How can I get 11 buyers for as efficient as possible with my ad budget? And that's where the game starts to really change. All right, now at this point, you know what the key metrics are, right? You know what to focus on, cost per purchase, ROAS, right? Return on ad spend, average order value, some of these key pieces here. So now that you've got that in a good place, Now we need to make sure, are we doing what's necessary on the back end, right? By that, we're talking about, are we making sure that we're doing all we can to keep a smooth flow from lead to clientele? Are we making back end offers? Are we making sure our touch points are there? Are we nurturing, right? Are we sending out emails to our list, right? Some very simple and basic things, especially with the power of AI here, that we can do, that we can make sure we are actually giving ourselves the best chance. You will see it where sometimes people will buy your low ticket stuff and they are ready to scale and ascend into the back end offer, your high ticket offer there. But you can squeeze a large percentage of extra buyers into clients if you just do the little things behind the scenes. And I'm telling you, that in itself is why a lot of people lose, because they're not willing to do that. And I think that a big part of it too is because they don't just have the system set up, right? The more you can kind of have this where that part is passive, where it's more automated and it's just kind of letting the system move while you're not around, while I can be on the beach. I made a video, I think last week or 2 weeks ago. I was in New Orleans and how I closed 4 clients while I was out there. I wasn't working while I was out there. I was out there for a bachelor party, but I was making sure, or in advance, I made sure that things are in a position. I can have I sell with my high ticket offer with offer docs in ways that I don't have to be on sales calls to close deals. This can be completely game changer. So when you have all these things in place, now the question isn't like, is it risky to scale? It's actually, is risky not to because of what you could be missing out, right? What that time that you're going to lose, the income that you could have got for it, right? So that's how I really want you to see this and have that mindset shift, because once you flip the switch, it can change your business forever. And your answer to this question will be different for everybody, but ask yourself, like, how fast do you want to grow? How fast do you want to scale? For most of you, it's fast. You want this thing to move. So let your actions actually show that reality. Don't let your subconscious mind delay the growth that could be happening there, right? Like I mentioned, my client, he's already closed a client from ads in this process here. So confidence is building, and we now know that the risk does not outweigh the reward. All right, so appreciate you sticking through watching this. I hope you got a ton of value from it. Now, if you're watching this, you're like, shoot, Justice, I don't even have my conversion path figured out. I don't really have my offer dialed in where it needs to be. I'll go ahead and I'll link over to a video so you can go ahead and actually just make sure that you can get that stuff set up. So like I mentioned, we can have the right foundation in advance to make sure that you're in a place where scaling makes sense. And that can even break down a little bit further for you how to now take your ad spend further and kind of get the nuances of what the offer look like and really everything in between there. So I'll make sure to link that video up at the top. If you like this, obviously hit the like button, subscribe if you like this stuff here as well too. And at the very least, I'll catch you later. Take care for now.